Welcome back to the Deep Life. And today we have the privilege of Dr. Allison Snowden joining us. Dr. Allison, welcome to the Deep Life.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here having this conversation with you. I'm really excited.
We are absolutely thrilled. And Dr. Allison, you are a healer, you are a coach, you are a medical intuitive, a trauma healing expert, a theta healing practitioner with over 15 years of experience. You do some things which are incredible and very much in alignment with this podcast, all about self-discovery, self-development, figuring out who we truly are and creating the life that we desire as opposed to what we've been believed or programmed to think that we need to do. And you have such a unique story that I want to dive really deep into, where you had a near-death experience. So if you don't mind sharing that with us, and if that brought you to where you are today.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, so my NDE was March 29th, 1999. So it's been over 25 years. I was 15 when it happened. So a month before my 16th birthday. I was born into a medical family. My dad is a surgeon in OBGYN. My mother's a nurse. And I'm one of 4 kids. So born in St. Louis, Missouri, so very Midwest upbringing. And so I feel like I was born into medicine. It's just in my blood. And like, I come from a very caring family. I just feel like that was like part of it. The first kind of, I feel like, initiation was my sister was diagnosed with Burkitt's lymphoma in '89, so 10 years before my NDE. And in those 10 years, I was 6 or 7 when she was diagnosed, and it was pretty severe. So she lost all her hair. It was like right before Christmas. And then she was just in the hospital. I think we had one of my kindergarten teacher come live with us because she was just in the hospital, like almost for a long time. She never really came out of the hospital. And so I started witnessing that. And I always wanted to be with my sister and be around her. So I feel like I wanted to hold her hand. I wanted to touch her feet. She went through a lot of, I think a lot of time cancer treatment can probably be underneath the guise of medical trauma, spinal taps when she was awake, which is actually crazy because now they put children asleep or people asleep when they do deep spinal taps, which I have vivid memories of those things happening. So she survived, and which is great. And there is something in our culture where in the initial trauma or cancer diagnosis, everyone is there and is supportive, but not many people talk about after. And I think that's where a lot of things came up. And it just spurred me on wanting to understand really. There was a lot of kids that died. So I was friends with a lot of the people that were going through chemo with my sister because they were all in the hospital. And then my parents started a charity that's still running today, Friends of Kids with Cancer in St. Louis. And so we were very deeply involved, but then being very deeply involved in that community, kids are dying. And so I think I went to probably about 9 to 10 funerals from when I was 6 to 15. And then right around when I was 14 and a half, the oldest cousin on my mother's side, Andrew, and we were all really close, died in a car accident. So his car flipped over and he just had 3 different life threats. He died instantly. But when that happened, I think that I was almost 15. The brain's development is a little bit more reflective at 15 than at 6 years old. And I think I just was like, what the F is going on? I'm like, with that said, I came from a very privileged household, but scratched the surface and all of this was going on. And I think I just had an existential crisis. And I was very quiet and I didn't really know how to, I think, didn't really know how to articulate things. I think I went through a depression, but it was like an existential depression where I was like, what is life about? Why I think witnessing people suffer it's a, it's a different type of traumatic experience than actually going through it yourself. And I think at such a young age, I think that just started to pile up. And so I just would be like, God, what is life about? Like, why are there so many kids dying? And when you're little and going through grade school and adolescence, whatever you're experiencing, that's your normal. That is normal. And so I think how I dealt with it is I just cried and was praying. I've always had just this connection with God or the other side. Even before my sister was diagnosed, I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school, but they aren't like really strict Catholics. They're just very ethical people. And like my mom liked the tradition. But yeah, I just think I just had this, what is life about? Why am I here? And it was just interesting because went to great schools. I competed horseback riding. I was really good at that. And then you're going through the regular middle school type stuff. And so that's going on. I don't really remember having that many talks with my parents about what I was really going through because I don't know. I don't know why there's all of this. So when my cousin died, I was like, it really vamped it up. And I just was like, okay, what is this? And for some reason, it's just, for some reason, I was just like really focused on, he died in a car accident by himself. And it was very traumatic injuries, like crushing his sternum, breaking his neck. And so I don't know why, but my psyche just focused on, oh my God, he was by himself when he died. Did he feel that pain? Oh my God. And my brain was just like obsessing and I would just cry about it. And then it triggered my own fear of my own death of what if I die a violent death? What if I like intuitively felt like in the depths of like my heart and my soul that there is a God. And also I know that this is just this physical reality for some level. Like I knew I exist beyond because I had like some eerie kind of angel kind of feelings from people that had passed before, some very eerie, but very real that I felt it. So I knew that there was a other side and I had communication with people on the other side. But I was like, but what if you die in the pain before? What about that? So I always tell my students when I'm talking about, what you focus on and focus on. I didn't know that at the time, but that's an invitation. When you pray to God and you ask the universe, I want to know what life is about. I want to know what happens after you die. I want to understand what is what is that about? Is that scary? And oh, if you die violently, is it like what happens right before? Let's just say I got to really experience all of it. And so that on March 29th, 1999, that's when just all of those answers came. And so my sister, it was for her senior spring break. And my sister had been in and out of the hospital for those 10 years. So from 89 to 99. And that February, she was in the hospital and she was not doing good. And then they finally figured out she had an autoimmune disease and CD4 autoimmune disease. And so they found the root of it, which was great because they were just treating her with no really plan. That was another I grew up watching my sister in the hospital and how they treated her and how other people treated sick people. And that's another thing to anyone watching or listening to this who's ever been sick. And I just am sending so much love because for me, I never had a problem having compassion for people that are suffering or sick or in pain. But let me tell you, there is a lot of people who are very judgmental, and you would think that by giving someone compassion that is sick is taking $10,000 away from them. I had witnessed so much judgment. There are some great things with people, but like my sister's teachers really, like I could see it, they didn't believe that she was sick. And that was so disgusting to me as her sister. And they, of course, they're not going to say it, but my sister always looked good. I looked great too after my NDE. I don't know why, but I think people are very quick to judge and superficial. And if they've never had a health issue or watched someone suffer, then I guess the default is just to not be compassionate and I guess a lot of people just have a judgmental default, which I think is really unfortunate and really damaging to people. So going back on to, she didn't end up, her doctors were like, do not go to Mexico. The hospital system is awful. And like the water is awful. And we don't feel comfortable if she basically has half the immune system as a healthy person, like not worth it. My parents had already paid for it. It was less than a month. So we went. It was like the fourth night. And what happened is we went out to dinner later, and then we had a curfew, and my room with my friend and my mom's, they were next to each other. We had to be back at 11. And so went out late, and then I had the ability to go with my sister's friends, and somehow I got separated from my friend I was there with. And so it was the first time that I was walking, everyone was like, oh, don't worry about it. But I freaked out because that's my responsibility, my friend. So I left by myself, and I went to go get my mom at the hotel. So the only time I had ever walked by myself, I had some people following me, some like locals, and I was walking and by myself and on like this, if anyone's ever been to Cancun, it's like where the main strip happens, and there's this like grassy kind of median, and then there's these U-turn things, and there's traffic's going this way and that way. And so I could feel these, and every woman knows this, like when there's just something is not right, you don't feel safe. And I just was like, turned around, and I was like, get away from me. And they were following me. And so I just started running. And then I can remember stepping off the road, looking, and I was like, and just quickly looking, I was like, that's weird. I don't see anything. And then it was like blank. So then it went black. And then I was like, then it was like open, and I was very disoriented, and I didn't feel, but I was like on the ground. And there was a flash, and this is where there was sexual trauma. So I remember that happening, and I was fighting, and then I don't know if I got knocked out again, but then there was a blank. And then the next thing that happened was I was floating above my body, and I saw my body, and I always call it like, this is my meat suit or my human suit for this lifetime. So this body that I'm in right now was I wasn't like hovering close to my body. I was like way up there, like way up. So it was like a very broad view of the scene, but my body, I was lifeless. There was blood all around me, and there was an ambulance trying to get through. And I was like, oh, I'm dead. And I was like, damn. And then it just went into like my NDE, like there's some NDEers or NDEer stories that are really focused. They're like at the hospital, they're listening to conversations. I was like, oh, drama, whatever down there. Like I didn't really, my focus just then became where I was at.
Mm.
And so that just in that moment, I felt just who I am, like who I am is like not my physical body, is not my brain, is not my personality. Who I am is this like this energetic consciousness that is frequency, that is energy, and that is not a physical thing. And then it's all illusions drop and you're like, oh, this is who I am. And it's hard for a lot of humans to get, it's not a physical place. Like physicality, matter is a certain dimension. It's not the only dimension. In fact, it's a very dense place here, but like where I was, the dimension I was, it's an energetic reality. So it's not like, heaven is not a physical reality. And for me, some people were like, oh, was there a visual component? I was like, no. And that's sometimes hard to get people's head wrapped around because humans are such like in the visual. It was just an energetic, and where I was at, it was just like, I always tell people part of my message of surviving that is, did I feel any pain before I died? And my injuries were pretty bad. There is some assault or attack that happened. And then what the Mexican police told my parents, which is, I don't really trust much of what they say, so who knows, but they said I was run over by a motor vehicle or a motorcycle, but the impact, whatever hit me, it was pretty profound force because it literally crushed my bones. So like my humerus, my top part of your arm, like that was just like in just like pieces. Wow. And then most of my ribs were cracked, but I didn't have a punctured lung. My jaw, my mandible was broken in four different places. My pelvis, so my pubic and my butt bone, your pubis and ischium, were broken in four different places. And then my lower leg, my tibia and fibula were a double compound fractured. My whole left leg was like skinned. And so it ruptured my tibial artery. So I just bled out. So yeah, so it was, and yeah, so that's what I was looking back, and I was like, it was just this knowing. I was like, that's when I was re-remembered or woke up, and they were like, oh, but you just don't have one body. You've been in many bodies. So here's like a 15-year-old Catholic girl from the Midwest who's never been, I think a lot of people, maybe if you're younger, you don't realize how the internet really wasn't a part of our life in 99 or in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like going on the internet was like, we had one computer and then you did it at school. And it was like this we used encyclopedias and we had to freaking look things up that way. So it was still before, which I actually like now treasure that I didn't have that type of upbringing.
Oh, we talk about that all the time. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm like, I was like, the days, the 90s. But yeah, I was just like, so I had no exposure to like reincarnation, like on any level, like that wasn't talked about. I went to a Catholic school. I always though felt like there was something more beyond that. But the things that were downloaded were, like here's an energetic encyclopedia of all of the moments you've ever lived or gone through, because guess what? The universe records everything. I'm like, everything, guys. And I don't know, depending on how you live your life, that might make you worried or not. But like everything is recorded, and it's like all actions, even like your perception of it and like the pivotal ways in which so it's not even just, it's deep recording. And so there's nothing that happens in the universe that the universe doesn't know about. Nothing, no one can trick or manipulate the universe. It is all knowing. And this energy of God or God consciousness was like the most loving, powerful presence you can ever feel in your life. And it literally is that presence of that high vibrational love literally just dispels all illusion, suffering, and literally you feel like you're at home. And I felt like I was held in this love and this like incubation of all knowing, all truth. And it was just this deep, energetic place of knowing, of love, of source energy. And it is literally, I tell people who are afraid of death, I'm like, why are you afraid of the best vacation you'll ever have in your life? I don't know.
I was just
I
going to say,
literally,
you're still in death. Feels good here.
it is amazing. We're gonna go there. We'll get a little bit deeper in this.
Yeah.
But because that is a lot of people's biggest fear is the fear of death. And it actually is just, and actually people's fear can keep them from crossing all the way over. That's another issue. But I was just, and it's above time and space. There is no time, there is no time and space, and matter is a dimension of like Earth and probably other planets, but like on that level of deep source energy, there is no time. So people are like, how long were you dead? And I was like, I was in a third world country or Mexico. I was on a podcast and someone was like, why do you say a third world country? I was like, it was. I don't have records if this would have happened in the States. My mother was trying to get her dying child out of a horrific hospital, but I don't have any records. We were just trying to get the F out of there because there was no good medical care. But probably, I would say in human time, which is not time in heaven. So if you go and you meet, probably it's really hard for the people. It's a lot easier for the person who passes over than the people who are left here because time moves so slow down here. Like it feels like forever, I'm sure. But I felt like I was up there. I don't even know, but I got all these downloads, all of this information. Right now, I'm using my voice and my vocal cords and words to communicate to you through English. This is something that you don't have to do on that side. Why? You don't have a human body. You're telepathically communicating and you're like just thinking and you're having a conversation energetically. And that is super cool. It happens here too. But that when you don't have a body, you don't have to talk. Right? And it's telepathic communication. You're this energetic being. And I was just like, remembering, already knew before. And then I remembered why I decided to incarnate. And I actually remembered that I wanted to have a near-death experience. And so there's a lot of things that are set up, and your soul has, depending on your level of, I don't know, where you're at in your soul development, soul consciousness, your soul, as you progress spiritually, I think you get just more conscious and intentional of your life. And I definitely agree that it is being born on earth, like there is a certain type of spiritual development and that you get by incarnating here on earth. And so I was like, oh, I remembered why I picked my parents. I had some karma with my mom that I wanted to clear up too. And then also just my parents were just people that were amazing human beings, but they really don't give a let me just be honest, the shit about spirituality, they're very grounded, very Midwest. Like, uh, I would be like, what happens when you die? And they're like, I don't know, but can you do the dishes and do something nice for someone? Get out of this kind of place and be kind to your neighbor, go do your chores, like whatever. So they just were like, which I think my soul needed to be grounded. So I think my soul needed that because I think, I don't know, I had a lot of different interesting lifetimes that were more meditating and doing other things rather than just, I don't know, just living life. But what happened is there's I'm like, I'm dead. There's people trying to help me. There's an ambulance coming. And I was like, okay. Like, I didn't really care. I was just enthralled with where I was at. And I was like, and so creator or that the energy. And I was like, I don't know where I end and where I begin, but I could feel that there are other consciousnesses with me and that there's some consciousnesses that were like not self-aware, but there was like no judgment. It wasn't like I think when you die, you get to evaluate yourself. It's not God. And that kind of pushes up against some religious systems. But I think God and the universe, you're evaluating yourself and everything's recorded. I didn't have much of a life because it was just 15 years. So I didn't really have that life review because I had hardly experienced much. But I just knew that like everything was recorded, and I can remember like looking and studying myself in between lifetimes and being like, okay, so I want to set this up. But then you have amnesia when you're born. So you forget. And so you're like, you have this, I don't know, is that part of the design? I don't know. In the further development of the human being, are we going to stop forgetting? I don't know. I had to do some healing. I had to do some healing on myself because I was like, this is my last incarnation. I was like, this is a lot that I've had to go through. I think life never, does it ever end? I don't think so. I think there's always expansion. But what I do know is there are things that before your birth, you probably don't remember. And also I like to say, I'm not special because I had that. I'm just one of the small percentage of human beings that have had an actual crossover and a conscious memory of coming back. And some people are like, what if, that's so funny. Some people are like, what if people don't believe you? I'm like, I don't really give a shit.
Yeah. What is relevant about that? Okay.
like, I'm like, I don't care. Everyone has a right to whatever the beliefs. But I was like, I bet though, when they're on their deathbed, they're probably going to remember what I said. And probably a lot of things become a lot clearer. And like, how would you live your life differently if you knew God was all love? And really all of the different depictions of God, I feel are just our humans projections of themselves onto God. If you talk to, I love near deathers. I can almost energetically know when I'm around someone who's crossed over. Like I'll be like talking to them and my soul's like they're a near deather. And that happened to me several times where I won't be in a space where I've gone to the near-death conferences and talked to them. And so that's super cool to be with like a group of people who've all crossed over and come back. And because I just am like with them and there's just this knowing and this feeling of home, because to be honest, coming back over after you're there, it's slightly traumatic. The earth and people, it's harsh down here. And I think a lot of us miss it. We understand what life is about, and it's sometimes painful to witness other people hurting others. And we're just like, this is so unnecessary. You can't force people to develop. Everyone's on their own journey. And so I think when I started to connect with other near death, there's this baseline of like relaxation and just like energetic ease. You're like, you can actually take a deep breath. And there's just this baseline of understanding of, because a lot of us, people like, were like, looked at us like, I knew not to tell my psychologist or my psychiatrist because of course my parents were medical people. And so they're like, oh, she needs some, she's been places. I mean, I didn't tell them about my NDE at first because I knew, I was like, they're going to put me maybe in a psych ward, or they're going to be very like, they're not the people to tell. So I kept it to myself because I didn't want anyone to, I didn't want to get looked at as crazy or incompetent. So I kept it to myself. And actually the first person I spilled it to was another near deather that I didn't know, which was weird because on some level, your soul knows like beyond what your brain and your personality think. There's like a force within you. And I think also if you pay more attention to your soul and your energy, then you get to know yourself better on that level. When you drop, because all of us here in America are trained that our value or who we are is like, oh, your skin color, oh, your vocation, your whatever conditioning that you got indoctrinated into. Maybe it's religious, mine was more scientific. And so it's whatever programming that you got indoctrinated to, but like when you have that spiritual experience of you existing and your true essence of who you are is like beyond what most people even can imagine. And then you're like squished back down into this like small body. You're like, what the heck? You're like,
what's going on? Yeah.
This is really, and what happened is some people were like, oh, did you have a choice and freedom? And all of that is an interesting thing. Cause like I said, sometimes you choose before, like you choose before you choose before the choice is available. I don't know if that makes sense. So like before I was born, I chose that I was going to have this, and I was
unconscious,
and I was going to go back. So I was like, did I have a choice? But I already made the choice and I was living my choice. And so I was there, and God, or my God self, also mirroring God, because we're all made from the same love and from the same spark and the same energy, was like, oh, there's all the past lives. That blew my mind. I was like, yep, exactly. And then all of this telepathic communication, all this downloads. But I think the main thing that I took from it was like, all that matters is literally on a soul level or spiritual level, is like, all that matters is like loving yourself and loving others. That's it. And I'm like, whoa. And that's really just how your soul, now maybe other souls have different things they're creating in their life or other focuses, but I guess for me that was like the biggest thing of love. And for anyone who's listening, guys, the love I'm talking about is it's beyond any love you've ever felt here on earth. Like and then I've had some people be like, oh, it's this or that. And I'm like, yeah, I've done all of those experiences, and it's like nothing. The biggest spiritual experience you can have, and there's some research on it, is like a near-death experience. It's like a complete, it is the most extreme one. And it is most extreme, but also there's a lot of gifts that you come back with. There's a lot of, most people that have crossed over, unless there's some NDEers that didn't have major trauma, but a lot of us have a lot of medical rehab to go through after. And you have to start from the beginning, and it is painful. And I don't know, I was talking to someone about an NDE, and they're like, oh, I would like, and I was like, oh, I was like, yeah, I was like, I would pause. And actually, one of the reasons why I do what I do is I teach theta healing classes. I think theta healing classes is a way to really spiritually awaken free of trauma in a really lovely way.
I want to
And
dive
like,
into that actually,
mhm,
for sure. I didn't
yeah,
mean to interrupt you there because
no,
you've
no,
blown my mind. I feel like you've so beautifully, vulnerably. So thank you for that shared, probably the craziest, most insane, epic story, obviously of this lifetime. And
yeah,
when you had told us that you had this near-death experience, Dan and I were just so thankful to have you on the show because, like you, we both grew up Catholic, obviously different families, and we're not taught these things as religious, but we have moved slightly, obviously, just to a more spiritual place. Everything that you're saying for the past 2 years, having this podcast, we've had numerous guests, numerous experts talking about the multidimensionality of us as energetic beings. And Dan uses the same suit, a meat suit. These are just our vehicles for the consciousness, for the divine, for God, whatever you'd like to call it, to live through us and experience. You can't experience life without duality. There has to be a relationship. There has to be separation. So I am so grateful because literally, Dr. Allison, everything that you're saying is mirroring our philosophy on life. And it helps us become a little bit less crazy to the people who are closest to us, because it's okay. You're literally describing what we say. Obviously, neither of us have had a near-death experience.
but you know,
the truth there. There's like a truth. Yes, there's a truth there. So it's just so wonderful to hear that and in your perspective.
And it's,
gosh, so
and it's like,
changed.
yeah, and it's so cool because it's like your soul knows, and you're and on a deeper level, and there's a deeper level of knowing. And I always say, I like a part of you, you don't fully forget. And I really do feel like, so like before I like zoomed back into my body, which is it super quick. It was like this thing, and I was like, oh, I'm dead. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, and I was like, I was gonna go back, and as I was like, I don't know, not like jumping into like my body, but all right, I'm gonna surrender into this part. And probably part of my soul was like, it's gonna be a rough one. And so it's just like, all right, I'm going back. And as I was like right before, and it was like this knowing, and it was like, bring this energy and anchor it in earth and in yourself. And I was like, what the are you, how in the hell? Like, can you send me a manual on how to do that? So anyway, then it's you're there, and then you're zoom back into your body. I wake up in the ambulance, like I wake up, and then I go out of consciousness because I like lost half my blood supply. And then I'm in this, then I wake up, and then I'm in this dodgy, probably can, if it was in the States, it would be a condemned building called a hospital in Canyon. And I literally saw blood everywhere. There was, the windows were boarded up and then had like iron, or I was like, okay. And I saw my mom, I guess my mom had gotten there, and I was like, oh, I was like, I can remember, I was such in shock at this point. I don't remember feeling anything. I just was like, something is not right, obviously. And I was like, I could hardly talk because my jaw was shattered and my tongue was swollen. And I was on a gurney, and my mom comes over and she's, Allie? And I was like, what? I was like, what happened? And she was like, you were hit by a motorcycle. And I was like, what? Because that was not, I don't remember that. Like obviously I knew I was run over by something because there was such damage, but I was like, oh, fuck. And you're going to go to surgery. I was like, and it's like, my mom, she's a nurse. And thank God she was a nurse. She said that she got there, there's glass IV bottles. She's like pumping up the fluid. She feels my pulse. She's either lost a ton of blood or internally bleeding. There's no CAT scan, no MRI. They did a portable X-ray machine, which they didn't even take. They were like, my hip's not broken, but they didn't take a X-ray of like my pubis and ischium, which is your pubic and butt bone, which is part of your pelvis, and that was broken. So they're X-rayed, but because there is that I don't know. So my leg I have a scar on my leg where my leg came out and exited and so there's a scar that big on one side on the outside, and then so my bone was outside my skin. And that is a medical that you have to get bone back in the atmosphere of your body, or else you'll lose your leg. They had to do surgery, and I was in my lived experience, I was attacked and by people and assaulted. And so my mom's, you're going to go, the people that worked at the hospital did not have uniforms on. So it looked like lay people's clothes. I felt like it was like I was in a nightmare. Then my mom's like, then they're taking me into the elevator and my mom is not coming with me. And I'm screaming because don't look like medical professionals. They are in normal clothes. This is such a bad building that they're pushing me on a gurney. And this is when I started to feel pain. And so like the gurney would go and then ricochet and like go in between doorways. And it would I felt like then I was like, oh, now I feel like my pelvis is going apart. So they took me down to surgery without my mom. They're all speaking English. They have no gloves on. They have street clothes on, and they wheel me into an operating room, which I don't know if you guys have ever seen an operating room and what that looks like, but the tools for orthopedic surgery it's like a carpenter, right? I don't think they did not have to put me under because I literally was so scared. I think I just passed out.
Wow.
And so I had a 8-hour or 7-hour surgery. My mom was trying to communicate just to put a Lizer off or like a fixator. So not like to do major surgery, but there was a communication barrier there. My mom later told me that she literally I think took the guy's collar and was just trying to communicate, this is my baby.
Yeah.
She went through a lot. And supposedly here's another twist in the story. Then I was in recovery, which was literally they didn't even have AC at this hospital. And I was covered in blood. There are no pictures about this. There was no cell phones that had cameras. And I literally told my mom if she ever took pictures of me, because I was like, this is something I don't want to remember. I was like, do not take any, no one took pictures of me in the hospital in my recovery, the first, I think 2 months. And then I was like, okay, you can. But I was like, I don't want to remember this. I already remembered enough. But supposedly I was caked in blood and my hair was they said that I had dirt and gravel and then I just had blood all in my hair. My hair was like a matted nest, and there was blood and gravel marks all over me. And so I went into surgery. They didn't even really clean the leg enough. They put a plate on it. Thank God they didn't amputate my leg. I was worried that they were going to amputate my leg. So that's good. And then I came out and I was in recovery. I had they didn't even have sheets. They had this itchy wool blanket on me that isn't sanitary. There's a glass IV bottle. There's no AC. So I'm my mom said I was sweating. She was like, are you bleeding? Are you sweat? It was just a nightmare, but I'm just in pain and just sitting there, closing my eyes. And my mom's, I'll be back. And I was like, where is she going? And I'm like, what? my mom told me was that there was this woman and then this daughter that came when I was in surgery. And she said that the person who hit me with a motorcycle, like they threw in jail and they for manslaughter at the scene. They were like begging my mom to come to get, I guess, because like they like I don't know the justice system in Mexico, but I don't think it's very fair or really they just are like, oh, she's dead. Okay, we're gonna, manslaughter, charged and fined, whatever. So I don't know how they got a flight or knew where I was, and I don't know. So there's a lot of things I don't know, like really how things happen and really what happened, like on a time schedule. There was no obviously police report. Well, the police thought I was dead. And so my mom actually went with this woman and I guess was like to the police, she's still alive. We're gonna leave for the States. And they're like, I don't believe it. She's dead. No, she's not. We're going. And so supposedly she got him out. So I guess this guy, I don't know, because this is my mom's story, but he, I guess, broke his arm or he needed medical attention. So I don't know. It happening. I struggled for a long time because I had my memories and I have some very vivid memories of things. And my parents were like, but this happened, or this is what the Mexican police said. So it was very disturbing for me for a long time because I couldn't go and talk to people. I couldn't really get facts to understand what actually happened to me, like in a course of a night. And no one was with me. So there's this pull of time where I have my trauma memories, and we can talk about that later, what trauma memories are and how they're encoded and how that's different than regular memories. And so it was that I really, I think, struggled with for a long time because, yeah, like my parents can say the Mexican police said something, but I mean, who trusts them? And are they really have any incentive to really know everything and tell the truth? And then also, like, I have my memories, and then I have my memories where I was just blank. I don't know how knocked out I was, how long it was. I don't know. But I think that was something I dealt with after I was in physical recovery for about 2.5 years, where it was nonstop orthopedic surgeries because I had surgery on my jaw, my arm, like 4 different times, my leg, 4 different times, and then other like minor surgeries of that. The last one is that they limb lengthened my leg. And so I had to relearn how to walk several times I learned how to walk the first time, and then the plate broke in half that the Mexican surgery did. And literally we have pictures somewhere in my parents' thing, not digital, but like the old school ones, but like my tibia looked like this. I had to have surgery. So they had to redo things. Then they did another surgery on my tibia, and then learned how to walk again. And then they were like, I was in a pain management with one of my doctors, and she's, have you always had a leg length discrepancy? And I was like, no, but I have a huge scar on both sides where my leg was obviously out. And so what they found out that probably I lost 2 inches of literal bone, chipped off when it broke off or something. So I had a 2-inch leg length discrepancy. So then I had to do a whole thing where they broke my leg again. And then I was bedridden again, and they pulled my bone apart that much. And then it took another year for it to grow in. So it was like nonstop. And then I was I think my junior year, I was there like 10 days, like one semester, 20, not even the second, like I was non-existent. I actually took the ACE in a wheelchair on pain medicine, which I was like, damn. I was like, I got some good scores. Like I got a perfect score on the science. I was like, I wonder what I would have scored if I wasn't like in pain on Percocet or Vicodin and traumatized. Because I didn't have brain trauma, but which is actually almost like a miracle in itself that I didn't have, like I had mind like concussion, but it literally, the orthopedic doctor was like, I've never seen such crushed bones on like a living person before. Because usually, if you have that bad, if there's that force, there's usually like some internal injury. Or if you have a broken jaw and you have an arm that's shattered, usually like you have a ton of brain trauma. But like I didn't. And so I think that was like a really profound miracle because a lot of people have a lot of brain trauma with like less force. And I mean, I've seen it, and like people get really messed up just on sometimes little forces of brain stuff. So I did have some it took like 2 years for, I feel like, my short-term memory to get back into that. But then once I was physically healed, then all of the nightmares came back from what I experienced. And then PTSD back in 2000 was like, no one knew about it. And so it was the weirdest thing. Cause like on one level, like I have the answers to the universe and my consciousness is, oh, like this. And then, but my consciousness was then like tucked into a meat suit that was like profoundly violated on so many different levels and broken. I was so traumatized. My family, when I first got to the hospital in St. Louis, so I was medvaced back to St. Louis because my dad worked at a high trauma center, and they wanted me to be in a hospital they knew. And they had to put like a thing on my bed or in there, do not touch Allison without telling her who you are, what you're doing. Because every time like a nurse or someone or, they're touching you like every couple hours, because when you're critical, I would hit them. I would try to hit them. I was just like, get away from me. So yeah, if someone just keeps on like touch. So it was, yeah. And then after I physically healed, then all of the emotional stuff came flooding in, because I feel like when you're physically healing, you're like, you're like, okay, like when I can't wait to walk, I can't wait. And then the doctors are like, oh, you're healed. And you're like, what just happened to me the past 3 years of my life? And so that's where, and then also I was in pain, like I had physical pain. And my doctors were like, I was so tired of hearing about this. You're so lucky to be alive. Like you're going to be in pain the rest of your life. And I was like, oh, sounds like so much fun to me. And then they're like, yep, like you're just going to be in pain. And I got prescribed all of those, the cassette, oxy, all of those, which I probably needed with the amount of orthopedic surgeries I had. But I was like, oh, I was going back to pharma. I was prescribed Vioxx. That was like an anti-inflammatory. And I can remember I felt like my heart churning in my chest. And I was like, I'm not going to take that shit. And my parents are like, why not? Like, it's for your pain. And I was like, because it feels weird. And I think I always trust my body. And later that was pulled because it was causing heart attacks. So I just then was like, I have to figure out how to heal, because I don't want to live my life in pain and like emotionally flashing back to a horrific event the rest of my life. Like I don't want to do this. I was young when that happened. So I definitely went through the psychiatric one, and PTSD wasn't being diagnosed. It was interesting because it's like, how do you metabolize that? And so then I was like sedated, I think, for a year. And I was like, I can't do this. So I just had to go out on my own and try to figure out how to heal and trying to find people who believed that I could heal. And so that's where I started going to cranial. Oh, I had a genius pain management doctor who told my parents to have a cranial sacral therapist and every day, and or not every day, that would come like a couple times a week. And it was just great because that helped me with my pain. And also, like, for some reason, the pain medicine would sometimes just make me have muscle spasms, which was very not good, because moving like a bone that was like moving a bone, like my arm that is broken, would just then cause more pain. So it's just this pain cycle. So that was like, then I just basically then started to put myself through school, because I realized that no one really has a lot of this figured out. And I met some people that had a piece of it, but basically I realized real fast, like, no one really, sorry, this sounds harsh, but no one really gives a shit. They do, but everyone is living their life. And everyone that was in my friend group or whatever had zero idea, nor would I want to, what the F I was going through. So super lonely, but I was like, okay, God told me I have to anchor this into myself and into the earth. And that's when I started just really sending white light and love to my body. And I saw my healing. Like, I just knew I was gonna walk and run one day. And like, my doctors laughed. They were like, that's, even my parents were like, Allison, you need to let that go. And I was like, no one, I'm like, I don't care if I do this for 30, 40 years, like, I will be pain free, and I will, like, and they would be like, you have to accept. I'm like, no, because accepting that is like not an option. And I am. And so I would rehearse running, because I was a runner and I was a horseback rider. I was the top equestrian in hunters when this happened. And I would run 5 miles. So I would be, and then it's one day or this way. And then the next day I could hardly move my big toe. Like, the contrast was just insane. A week before, I was running 5 miles and jumping over jumps that were 5'3" on a horse. And then I need 5 people to get me. I was bedridden for a while, and then I was so broken, it would take 5 people to help me get up. My big toe lost some nerves. And so it was just like, I couldn't even get my big toe because I dropped foot. So there was nerve damage. And so I couldn't even move my big toe. Like, just that was just insane. I went to school, did my undergrad in psych, and I first started pre-med, and I was like, I don't want to become a doctor. Like, that, like, a lot of people could do that. That's not intuitively. I was like, there's going to be something else. So I did my undergrad in psych, and then got my massage therapy, because that helped me so much. And then after I did that, then I went in to get my master's and my doctorate in Chinese medicine. And while I was doing that, I always was doing yoga, meditation. And then I got trained in a lot of different modalities, NET, NEAT. I started doing Reiki at 20 and teaching people at 21, went through all my Reiki certification. And with Theta healing, came into my life. Probably it was the last one. And I was like, and I also got a lot of training in gut health. So I did a lot of functional medicine training, followed a lot of doctors. So reading labs from a functional level, because I was anemic after, but I also had like low vitamin D and B levels that have a profound effect on your psyche and your body. There's all these different things that really added, that I learned along the way in all my training, kind of piecing things together. And I did get pain-free during graduate school. So that was like 20, I was like 29, 30. And I like would be running, and I couldn't run as much. Like, it was like 3 or 4 miles, but I would just be like sobbing, crying. I was like, I'm like,
Mhm.
life, like, oh, this is amazing. But then I don't know, I slipped in yoga and had to have some knee surgeries too. There's some things with that. But I, how I came to where I am right now with what I'm practicing, and it is all, I love having the basis of Chinese medicine, because the basis of Chinese medicine is there is energy. It is very energetic, and qi is a part of that. And it is a holistic medicine, meaning the mind, body, and spirit are all affected. The external and internal environment affect us, what we eat affect us, and also like how our emotions are. And if you have imbalanced emotions, a suppression or overexpression of any of the emotions, you will eventually damage an organ. And so acupuncture, so went to a lot of school with that, and it worked, and it helped me, and it helped my nervous system. But there was still some part of it with just PTSD and emotional trauma and surviving a traumatic event that wasn't touching certain things, like just nightmares sometimes. And I was like, there's just something that is in, because I know that like my true self is not a traumatized self. And I just was like, this poor brain and body that I'm like residing in just for this lifetime is just doesn't know something with the heart, like how my brain is functioning. It's like tripping itself up. And I tried everything. This is my life here. I think the blessing of having such a dramatic thing is that I think a lot of people have maybe lesser, they have some trauma, but it doesn't take over their life, and so they just don't address it. And so it just slowly erodes their psyche, body, and who knows, like they wake up at 40 and they were emotionally traumatized or sexually traumatized, and they like didn't know. And then they get at 30, 40, and they have all these autoimmune, they have all of these unknown illnesses. And to me, that makes perfect sense. And so I guess I was lucky in that I couldn't suppress or repress what my trauma was, because it was so in my face and it was so like there. So I had to move through it. And so I see a lot of amazing people. Also, like physical trauma, broken bones are super easy. It are much easier to heal than emotional abuse or being gaslit for what happened to you, or not, or just the subtle things that people do or not do, or just most, I think our world is getting a little bit better on how to be emotionally safe.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of people are really judgmental. A lot of people don't really a lot of medical doctors, and actually, unfortunately, psychologists they're not trauma informed, which is like blows my mind. But yeah, I've been to like, you have to ask your providers if they are trauma informed, meaning that they understand the psychobiology of trauma and how they treat you. They're not going to, they know how words and how they frame certain things could re-traumatize someone. And they've taken extra training, and they know how to talk to people that have been emotionally abused or gaslit or sexually traumatized and not believed. And yeah, and also there were some things that happened in Mexico, like while I was in the hospital, and like transporting very dehumanizing things that happened to me that really makes you question, do some people like have a soul? I feel like I've seen and experienced just, yeah, like you're just like, wow. So I think, and also how do you heal from that? And then what are the effects of that? And what I saw the effects of was when I suppressed my truth of what happened to me, And also like I would have nightmares and just clips of just little slivers like revealed through my dreams. And like your body knows, your body remembers, your body like remembers everything that it's been through. And I think the new phase of medicine is really allowing the body to process that. But our society really encourages repression or suppression. And sometimes you need to do that in order to move through a situation that is not like healing in nature, but that left unchecked will develop into a disease. And there's actually facts like the ACE study. Are you guys aware of that? So the ACE study is basically a longitudinal study that was done with people with medical insurance. So not the lowest, not poverty, but like middle class insurance. And it's an attempt to track adverse childhood experiences and then see if and they looked at their medical records. And so adverse childhood experiences actually set up just especially in the early years, if you experienced, and it doesn't even go into the exhaustive list because, the ACE study doesn't say, did you watch kids die for 10 years of your life? But that was traumatic for me. But did parents divorce? Did someone have mental illness? These different things. And it correlates that actually sets you up for a propensity to chronic disease. So chronic disease, unlike what the media would like us to know, that viruses or other things are the biggest killer, actually the biggest killer. And obviously, guys, we have to die some way because we're not going to eradicate physical death. Like we have to exit the world some day. There's a lot of people that have heart attacks, cancers, asthma, autoimmune, and this is directly correlated with adversity. So the higher adversity you have, the higher correlation you can have this. And if you have a lot of adversity, there's statistically, you die younger. So there's something in our human brain and our human form, and also obviously our medical system, that we're really bad at treating trauma and also the effects of that. And so that's where I've played because like, I don't have time for other people to figure this out or for this to become mainstream. I was like, I need to find something that works because I want to live my best life. But if I solved my physical pain, but then I would get these flashes and it wasn't a flashback as an individual, but it was almost like an emotional state of being, it's almost indescribable, but it was like, I can't move, or so my nervous system would somehow decide, uh-oh, there's danger. And I would just be going along my day and I would just be like, and living in a capitalistic society, like you can't. So then I got my crash course then I just went down another deep dive, read every book on trauma, also just really got into that. And I'm like, how can I heal? Luckily, I don't even know how I came across theta healing. I was just like, I'm going to take a class. Like when in doubt, I've always just been like, okay, like taking a class, reading something, I'm not going to wait. You can't wait for someone to heal you. You have to be an active part. So this class, like theta healing. So my first class, I was really having horrible anxiety, emotional flashbacks. And I was like, okay, I need to find a solution. So I found this class. I took the first class. I literally felt like I was back in heaven. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I just went and ran with that. And basically with theta healing, and Olive Viana, she's the creator of theta healing. So actually this is really interesting. She started teaching this because she's older than me. She started teaching this like in 99, which is 9 years, I think, which is weird. Anyway, she has developed this curriculum of spiritual, she doesn't say this, it's mind body, it's a meditation and also a technique for mind body and spiritual health and healing. I take more of when I teach, so I've gone through almost all but one of the teacher trainings. So I've gone through all the practitioner and teacher trainings, and I've been teaching now for full time for 5 years and seeing clients remotely. And basically, this teaches people to connect to their divine within and then around them, and then also retraining the subconscious mind and deprogramming. And when you retrain the subconscious mind and release trauma, shock from your body, from different levels of your consciousness, guess what? You just feel physically, emotionally better. And so I have seen miracles in myself, my PTSD, and I think I had also symptoms of CPTSD because I had such continuous trauma, just are basically, I don't have experiences of that anymore. Also strangely, you're like, what else could I experience? How I got into this full time is I had a stem cell shot because I had some knee issues because I slipped in hot yoga, tore a meniscus. And so then I had a stem cell shot and it went septic. So it actually like put me again in bed rest. But this actually, they wanted to do a knee replacement on my left knee. And I literally was like, no, I don't want to do surgery. This literally, I have no cartilage in my knee, but I'm completely pain-free and fine. So this has the ability to really deprogram. And a lot of people have their stress response as according to our childhood wounds. And what I see is a lot of people with their childhood wounds and their programming, you get programmed from 0 to 6. That's where a lot of the deprogramming happens. And so what happens is you get programmed, and you can get programmed after, but there's the huge chunk that gets programmed. And so what happens is people have a cover story. I want love or money or health, and who doesn't, but the reality is this. And so what I've found is that through taking the classes is you can, first of all, have an experience and also know you have a solution to heal stress in your life, and also to deeply align with your soul, and then also the energy that I felt when I was in my NDE. So literally, like when I'm teaching theta healing and I'm in that state and connecting, I feel like I'm channeling that energy that I felt. But the coolest thing is that you don't have to have an NDE to like really feel that and embody that. You can take a class. And I really feel like we're in the era of a gentle awakening, and awakening through love and connection and through healing. And my story is very dramatic, but I think, and also a lot of people who've had emotional trauma, they have worthiness issues. They maybe are chronically stressed. This is all controlled by your unconscious and subconscious. So you can't control it by your brain. But when you go into theta, the theta brain state, and what I teach is people to go into theta and then heal themselves. And I just really want to train as many people as I can in this, in a very deep, nurturing way, because I really do think that no one outside of us is gonna save us. It's really us remembering who we are and taking control and putting ourselves in the driver's seat of our health, and also reconnecting ourselves to the divine that we are, and we know that we are. And hopefully, I don't know, with other people's help, really just embody that on a deep level. And then that has a ripple out effect. And so I really think that the more people that do these classes or that get more conscious, we first have to have inner peace before we have a peaceful society. we can't force peace by an external thing, that we have to create it first within ourselves.
Oh my God. I think that was just such an empowering message and beautiful way to wrap up this episode that has just left Dan and I so grateful to have met you, and deeply compassionate and awe-inspired by the story of the most tragic thing that could have ever happened, but to triumph. Perhaps it really does seem like you are fulfilling your life's purpose here now, being able to help people on such this deep level of a theta state that is accessible to us all through our consciousness, the divine, God, like whatever you said.
And when you're talking, I'm like getting the God like goosebumps, and I'm like, literally, it's like I think the most untapped, we're all in this technology era. And I was like, but no one's talking about the technology and the power of your soul.
Yes.
And nothing can replicate, and everything is your matter, your brain, everything is a reflection also of your consciousness. And it's like the technology of our soul and our heart is the most deeply untapped resource right now in humanity. And I really feel like through my sessions, but then through like with people healing themselves, and I didn't want to just survive. Like I now I feel like I finally feel like I've healed my trauma, because and like my soul is anchored in my body. What I see with a lot of women, and I work with a lot of women, but they are not in their body, they're in their brains, and that is unhealed trauma. And and I think a lot of women, it is rare to have someone who's deeply healed on many levels. And of course, there's always more healing to come, but it's just, there is a distinct time where I actually had done so much safety and deep work with Theta and my healer, and gone to classes in Montana, where my brain stopped. Like the rumination, the fear, the nightmares just stopped. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I was like, I'm in my body, and I'm like, it's been a while. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like my brain is not ruminating. I don't have overthinking. I'm not worrying, and I'm in the present moment. And literally it probably took me 22 years to get back here. And,
Wow.
and I really do feel like that's part of like women's spiritual journey of really is like deep embodiment of that. And also, I feel like it would be cool to have another talk. I want to talk to more men about like their own spiritual journey, because I'm a woman, and I've worked with a lot of women, and I know what I had to go through to heal those different wounds. But I really do feel like I was like, screw like all these other things that society says. I was like, my brain has shut off, and I'm just like chilling out in my body, and I'm having so much fun. And like that, and I feel like I finally have anchored my soul and that vibration in my body. And like, I can't even put a price tag on it. Like I literally, it's amazing.
Listening to you talk today, it really
Yeah.
seems like you had to go through all of that so that you'd be in this unique position now to really be of service and help people at a time when people need you.
And you know what? Also, everyone's like, some of my clients, I have many different types of clients, but some they come to me and they're just dysregulated, all this stuff. And I'm like, a couple of them really bad medical stuff. And I'm like, oh no, I'm like, all right, we got you. And they're like, I believe you. And I'm like, yeah, because literally, I don't think I've seen anyone as fucked up as I was. Like, all of the levels, like completely destroyed mentally, emotionally, psychologically, like on all levels. Nothing scares me really right now. Nothing does. No,
That's a beautiful place to live in, that not fear. It's like you're broken, but your pieces were put back together all perfectly in this. And where can we direct people? Because you seem to just embody this essence of divine light and love to help others. So we want to make sure that we can direct people where to find you and where to possibly work with you, if that is something that you offer still.
Yes. So it's Dr. So Dr. dot and then Snowden, SNOWDEN.com. So that's my website. And then I'm on my main social. I'm on Instagram, Dr. and then it's just Dr. and then Allison, Allison, and then Snowden, SNOWDEN. And my classes are there. And so also I love talking to people, answering their questions. And then that also inspires me for some content or anything else to be of service. But I have theta healing classes. So there's a curriculum. So you have to do it in a specific order because they've designed it to do it in a beautiful way. But I usually have beginning foundational classes like 3 times a year in January, and then September, so fall. And then I usually do an intensive, like where the 4 weekends in June or one of the spring, summer months to get people through. And I just see people deeply healing from physical things. So I work with people with physical issues, pain, MS, like just all different types of physical issues. And then also just emotional anxiety, stress related stuff. But then also like people a lot of times, like just with attracting also self-love, but then also relationship issues. So trauma or subconscious programming comes out, relationships to other, relationship with self, health, a relationship with money, and then also just, those are the mains where I see it. But we work in all the realms because it all is interrelated.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. Dr. Allison, we just cannot thank you enough for sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge, all of what you've gone through. You have been such an inspiration. We thank you for joining us on the Deep Life.
Thank you so much. And yes, I would love to stay connected, and sending everyone that's listened, thank you. Just so much love. And yeah, everyone has this within them. And there's nothing more fun than to watch people heal and just like release things that were never theirs to carry in the first place. Thank you.